Welcome to Doing It My Way by Beata Matras, a podcast about project and product management, communication, brand, and IT. All these topics will definitely improve and have a positive impact on your career. So join me today, subscribe, and expect a new episode every week. Thank you. Today, I'm joined by Seemin Suleri, VP of Engineering at Prima, tech transformation leader and public speaker who specializes in tech transformations and leading high-performing teams. We'll be exploring how leadership and continuous improvement drive success in technology sectors and how to manage a demanding career with being a parent. Welcome to the show, Semi.
Hello, Pieter. It's really nice to be here and to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. Exactly. To start our conversation, Sami, could you please share your journey to becoming a VP of engineering and the leader at Prima?
Yeah, so I started off my career as a software engineer. So engineering has always been the central part of my entirety of my career and my passion. Really, I used to love solving problems, and I used to love maths as well. So I ended up in this kind of a career. And I started off by being a developer for an aerospace company. So we were writing software to training traffic controllers. And then I worked in a number of industries, including electronics manufacturing, insurance, e-commerce, more like web development, and then now back in insurtech. So, very interesting ways. I work for a number of companies that are different in sizes as well. So, right from smaller companies, SMEs, to massive companies over thousands and thousands of people. Um, and I think one of the key elements in terms of becoming a leader for me was I decided I was looking at several opportunities all the time. I was very ambitious right from the beginning, and I wanted to see how I could contribute to the wider team on a bigger level. So that's how I ended up in a leadership position by chance, and often sometimes by disappointment, because the leaders were not really leading the software teams very well. So I thought I'll have a crack at it. So yeah, that's how I ended up here. And now I'm leading a team which is geographically distributed in Europe, and really exciting times.
Yeah, I saw that recently you've been in Turin for a team building exercise and spending some time together. So it's an amazing idea, I think, to gather the team in one place and travel together.
Yeah, I think we always, whenever we are together, we make sure that all of the interactions are really high quality. So, because we are remote first company, so a lot of us are distributed, like I said before. However, what we can do, and at Prima, we do a lot of, spend a lot of energy in thinking about, is how, when we come together, to make those interactions really high quality. And one of the ways we do it is by traveling together, exploring things together. And we might be doing actually a workshop, but thinking about it, we said last time before Turin, we said, okay, so we are doing a workshop. What should we do? We actually traveled an hour out from Milan, and we went to Lake Como, and we were at this absolutely amazing location. We still did the workshop, but we still had this great location, great food, and make sure those interactions are really, really strong in between that. So that's very important for us.
Yeah, totally agree that it's very important to provide the team with this kind of safe environment. And you spoke about it during your Agile Swarming presentation, during your Agile Swarming speech. And that's what I want to also cover today, because you were not only sharing your personal story, your mistakes and learnings on the way, but also how to build high performing teams. So, can you describe your approach to building high performing teams, and what qualities do you look for in potential team members?
One of the things I would say is that when you're thinking about a team specifically in a high performance teams, in certainly from my perspective, I don't think about a team member. So high performance teams are actually comprised of many different types of people coming from various backgrounds. Could be a super diverse team and consisting of various personalities. So essentially, there is no unique set that you can say, oh, I looked at this person and that's the perfect fit for that team. You actually build the team around the people you have. So that's a way of building the team. So you might have let's say a team of various personalities performing in various different directions or different ways. But what you do is to build a high performance team, you need to find ways in order to build an environment where everybody can come together. So it's more important to emphasize on the team than on the individuals. So any group of people can turn into that high performance mindset if the environment is right, if you set the right standards, if you set the right processes, and also the culture is very very important. So um, in order to build a high performance team, there are certain elements. It's the teams that are okay versus the teams that are great. The teams that are great, there is a connection there between the team members, and that is the fundamental component that distinguishes I would say, an ordinary team from an extraordinary team. And so we emphasize a lot on building those connections so that the team can perform to the next level.
But do you have like any specific strategies to like install this culture of innovation, high performance, agility within your teams?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say, first and foremost, is what is the story that you're telling your teams? Okay. So let's say that you hire a team is in a company, but they need to really understand what the business or the company stands for. And then they need to be able to link that story to their own story. So, for example, if you're saying you might be adding this little project and this little thing in a silo, but actually it is a part of a wider picture. So it starts off by businesses taking responsibility of telling the story to the people that work for them, who work for them. And then in that way, once you figure out as an individual that you're not really an individual, you're a part of a bigger whole, you figure out that your little contributions are actually a part of a wider contribution and you are playing a role in taking the business forward. So that's business's responsibility. The other responsibility of I would say tech leadership is to make sure that you are setting the right expectations. So you need to be very open and honest about your teams, about what are the standards of work, for example. But standards of work can be enforced or can be encouraged. There are different ways in which you can actually tell the teams that this is the problem and this is how you solve it. If you're doing it top down, they'll think this solution did not actually come from them. And in my experience, a high performance team is a team where the solutions are bottom up rather than top down. So you ask the people to give you your pain point, is to give you their pain points, and then you can devise solutions that resolve their pain points. And you will only get the buy-in from the team if they know that whatever you are recommending is actually resolving their problem. So it requires you to be a good listener, taking in implementing a feedback culture, and sometimes there will be many tough conversations because you can go into a system where people would start off a conversation by even saying sometimes, well, I don't like your leadership style, or I actually don't like this company. Or so you can actually start these conversations from a very negative point, but as long as you establish the trust, you can turn it around.
Okay, that's very interesting, especially about sharing the story, the common vision, mission, like connecting it to the wider corporate strategy, I would say, or the company strategy. certain standards of work, and this bottom up, not the top down approach, which very often is. I don't know. I would say like it's still not very popular. Yeah, it's still like there is like this installed in some companies. There is like still this install. I need to tell you what you have to do because I'm like a higher in a hierarchy. Yeah.
It is. And I think one of the things is that sometimes I've come across leaders who always feel insecure a little bit if they're thinking, oh, if everything's coming bottom up, then what am I doing? You know? And I think what they are doing is they are the enablers. I always think about this analogy, okay? When you become a leader, you're no longer a cog in the machine. You're no longer a part in the machine. You're the oil in the machine. So the your teams are the parts in the machine that make it go, and you're the oil that makes everything smooth. So you still have a role to play. So one of the roles is that when you're generating ideas, again, this is about you said something about culture of innovation. So the way you do it is that you make sure that you are not punishing people for their failures. So failures is something that is, a key area of interest for me, because if we punish people for failing, guess what they're not going to do? They're just not going to be able to experiment. They just know that there's a penalty. If we experiment something, if we try new things and we fail, then there is a penalty. So they don't do that. So basically, you as a leader have got this tremendous, I would say, responsibility. And once you do that, the ideas that are generated bottom up are actually amazing, because the people who are doing the work day to day are much closer to the problems than you are as a leader. And so it makes sense that the solutions are coming from where the problems exist. And you can refine them and direct them, but you shouldn't always be telling the solutions like that. I have seen that where we enable the teams to come up with solutions themselves and actually lead that way, the teams are much more engaged, the teams perform better, and they know that they have the autonomy that is needed. But yes, I do agree with you that in a lot of leadership there is this apprehension about doing that change and making that shift, because people are a little bit insecure about their own role after that.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about these challenges. What were the challenges that you faced in aligning team objectives and like creating that high performing teams and connecting that to the broader corporate strategy and how you overcame them?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that fundamentally, when you start building a high performance teams, you need to think about um, the business and engineering, because I work in engineering, as one big team. So I think a lot of the times you have to go against the us versus them mentality. And it really, really makes a difference when you go to the business and you say to them, we are here to serve you. A lot of the times that I believe that engineering and software teams struggle because they don't have this almost service based mentality. And the business always thinks, oh, the software guys don't really understand what we're saying. And the software guys always say, oh, the business doesn't really know the software. And so there's this us versus them. But if you go into the problem space and then you think, okay, all of this is one team. So you start thinking about it that like that, then it makes some of the conversations very easy. But it always starts also with the most fundamental thing that I believe is that sets everything apart is the connection. How are you making the connection with your business counterparts? Do they trust you when you say something? So when you make a commitment, do you actually deliver? And by delivering, I mean I don't just mean software delivery. I also mean the other type of things that we do. If we are making commitments to documenting something, or understanding the requirements, or scheduling, or showing up in meetings on time, many ways to show people your commitment. And also, what are you doing to build that connection? I would recommend people to go above and beyond in building the connection with their stakeholders and their business counterparts, which basically means step out of the office. I always say this, people normally in our office environment, an office environment, I mean, even for remote teams, people are somewhat uptight. They have their schedule, they go in, there's expectation. We don't really bring our whole selves to those conversations and those interactions because it's like almost like a stereotypical um, day that we have thought of. But what we need to do is we need to pull people out of those environments, put them together, take them to somewhere like Turin, where they have some natural curiosity going. We're looking at the same buildings together. We're talking about families, the travels we did, some of the places we lived, some of the food we ate. And in doing that, you might think, maybe it's just an expensive exercise, but actually what we ended up doing is I now know those 12 or 13 people much more than I did when I first entered there, just by having this trip together. And so, in that way, you are forming a connection. And the connection is the fundamental point because there will be tough conversations with the business when you're aligning it and when you're doing that. But those connections is establishing a trust, which would be fundamental when you're having those tough conversations. So, the challenges that I faced is again along those lines that sometimes people were us versus them and they were not able to build a connection. And the way to approach that is to make sure that we are spending the time together to build those connections.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning these challenges. And also, you touched upon my next kind of question, where that is, what are some key lessons you have learned throughout your leadership journey in the tech industry?
There are quite a few. Okay, so perhaps a few would be to say to the teams really is that you have more control over things than you believe that you do. Sometimes in software we think about, especially if you're working in a large corporate, which I did, and then you realize that everything has got red tape, and you're just frustrated. And so software teams tend to look outside and say, this is frustrating, this is frustrating, this is frustrating. But actually, what we figured out is that there are so many things within our control. And once we started reflecting on those things, we became 10x more, productive and efficient. And so the key lesson for me was that there are more things in your control than you think there are. So thinking at yourself internally and figuring out those things can make major differences. Even though you might not be able to change the entirety of the corporate environment, you can make a lot of difference for your teams. Um, and another thing I would say is that there is a lot of value in dealing with one thing at a time. So you might end up in a new job, especially in a leadership position, and you think, "Oh my goodness, there is a huge mess there." And then this needs doing, this needs doing. I would say prioritize instead of attacking everything at once, which basically means that you might burn out and then the results wouldn't show because you wouldn't actually finish anything. Pick up through in the order of priority, pick the thing that is the most important and work on that. So if you focus on one area at a time, you can have a higher level of success. And once they're turned around, then you can move on to other things. And never underestimate the power of human connection. I believe that in the software world, sometimes we forget that we are dealing with people, not machines. So even though the code and, and the software is much more predictable, we are still human beings with emotions and frustrations and all of the baggage that we bring to the table. And so by building the connection with each other, we are much more resilient as teams and we are able to perform at a much higher level when the challenging time comes. So, utilizing the time that you have to relax with your team to build those bonds and connections so that when a challenging time comes, you are able to hold each other's back and perform together much, much better and much stronger than you would do as an individual.
I really like what you said about human connection because, yeah, very often when we are coming to work, we think we are, yeah, focused on the logic, focused on the business. There is no emotion at work, but actually, we're human beings, so we are more emotional that we tend to think about ourselves. And yeah, the only kind of way is, I think, to accept that and choose, of course, the reactions that we are presenting, or behaviors that we are presenting to one another or to our teams. But what I wanted to ask also is, like, how these realizations and lessons influence your leadership style and approach to leading teams, not even high performing teams, but to leading teams.
I would say, like I mentioned to you, when I was just a team lead in a large corporate, I could hear the frustrations from my team day in day out about, all of this red tape. We can't get anything done, blah blah blah. And I thought, I can see a lot of disorganization in the way we were working. So the first thing was, I focused myself as well as my team on, let's just look at what things we can fix. Let's forget about the things we cannot fix. And we figured out that 80% of the problems were were created by us ourselves, because we were not working in an efficient way. We were not doing training and development in a good way. We were not pairing up with each other in a good way. It is a bad find in a way. It is a difficult finding about yourself when you reflect. But through that reflection, we were able to create a lot of difference, even while the other larger environment did not change. So that's how it influenced that. Um, the other thing I would say, in my role right now as VP of engineering, I come across a lot of several different, let's say, challenges of difference in nature, right from team level to department level to company level. And the way to address them, if I wanted to address every single challenge with the same amount of energy, I will run out very, very quickly. So I do have this almost a very strict list of priorities, which help me guide my energy. And so that I can concentrate on that issue at that time with full force and full energy and full concentration, and then move it to a point where I'm happy with it, and then move on to something different. So I don't try to deal with 50 different things at the same time. And that is what day to day. It is something that keeps me going. I feel like for leaders, it is a very important thing. And human connection, I would say the third thing I mentioned was the power of human connection. And I think that this is hugely underestimated a bit. And I think that I don't know whether you're familiar with the work of Dr. Robin Dunbar, who did a lot of research, who's, in terms of our evolutionary biology. And he figured out that how many human connections we can actually maintain, and how many, and what we need to do in order to maintain them, and what is ultimately the influence of those human connections on us. And a lot of the stuff that comes out of it shows that if we are better connected with the environment, we thrive, and that's the way we are evolved to be like that. And therefore, anything that adds to that connection, I have felt in my teams, the teams that were better connected with each other were much more resilient in very, very challenging times. I've also felt that those teams that are connected like that, they treat each other much better. People are much, much higher engaged in their work, as well as their generally in life. They're happier, and the quality of work that is being produced is great. And they take ownership of their mistakes, and move forward in a positive way as well. So these are some of the ways I implemented some of those things.
I really like those, and I really like this highlight of human connection, because that's very close to my mind and heart, I would say. Um, but I also want to touch the topic of diversity and inclusion, because there is like a huge topic arising in business right now about diversity and inclusion. Yet it depends on leaders, actually, whether that's really implemented in the culture and we are really striving for the kind of real promoting of diversity and inclusion. How do you ensure that your leadership practices promote diversity and inclusion?
I would say one of the things is, as a leader, you need to make sure that the way you are making decisions, all voices are heard. So you're not just paying attention to the loudest voices in the room. And most importantly, you're not just paying attention to the troublemakers in the room. You know, this classroom thing that happens, that teachers tend to spend the most time with the most troublemakers. So the ones who are high performing in a classroom never get the attention because the teacher is like, they'll be fine, you know. But the main thing is, you need to actually switch it around. You need to pay attention to the most highly performing people, so that the people know that this is the standard you go by. But the point I was trying to make is that the way you communicate with your team needs to make sure that everybody has got a voice. Everybody has a way of communicating as well. And you are not just, like I said, you know, you're not just paying attention to the troublemakers. You are paying attention to all the voices. And you have put mechanisms in place where, if people have got different voices or different points of view, they're not shot down for it. One of the things that is really, again, that goes against any type of diversity, cognitive diversity, that you try to add to your group, is when somebody challenges someone. So, for example, the leader of the group is challenged by somebody who's probably thinking differently, hence the diversity comes in, and you shut them down because you say to them, no, this is not the way we do things. This is how it's done here. You need to just get used to it. And this is how you actually, even though you might have brought in a diverse workforce, you've actually just shut them down. So, what you need to do is, you need to do all of the fundamental work in order to make sure that if someone challenges you, and it starts with the leader, if somebody challenges you, you thank them for the challenge and you incorporate their ideas. So, having people with different viewpoints, describing them and defining them in different ways, is a very positive thing. However, if you are just going to shut them down, then there is no point at having a diverse team. So for me, what I have incorporated in my team and in the culture is that you can challenge anyone. Anyone can challenge anyone. It's a really a culture which is based on candor. So a developer can give me direct feedback and I will tell them how I'm going to action it. And normally, I hold myself accountable, but also I make it very public about what are some of those points that we are working on and how we are going to achieve that. So it comes straight from the leadership all the way down. All of my leaders do the same thing, and this is something that that is very, very prominent in the culture you create. So when you do that, it promotes the inclusion and diversity that you have brought into the teams. And largely, again, you know, I do a number of initiatives for women in tech, getting your voice heard, because we don't have that much representation of women generally in the workforce. And so trying to improve that, and by understanding what might be some of the cultural things, or might be some of the corporate policy things or flexibility things that are in the way of getting more women into tech. And so I work on a number of initiatives directly in order to improve that as well.
Can you describe these initiatives that lead to increase the representation of women in the software industry?
Yeah, so I would say the easiest thing you can do, I think, and I would recommend it for all the women out there, is to get seen and heard. So just stuff that you are doing, stuff that a lot of other I see amazing women doing, that leading the way, is to get yourself seen and heard. It's very important because then other people who might be considering the career think, oh, I want to be like Beata, you know, I want to be running my own podcast and talking about product ownership and all that kind of stuff. So, and then they have a role model to follow, right? So, role modeling is one thing that you can do. The other thing is to make sure that you're working alongside the community. So whatever community you're in, it doesn't have to be grand. So I live in the UK, in the south of UK, in a county called Dorset, and I've set up a community interest company with another lady called Sharon Jones, and we run Women in Tech Dorset, which celebrates women from this area and highlights their contribution and creates a network and training and development opportunities. But alongside that, we also work to inform and educate some of the businesses to create better working spaces for women. So we have Women in Tech Charter, and this enables the companies, if they want to go as a free resource, they can download and figure out how to actually act on some of those things to make the workplaces better. And other than that, within Prima as well, I get involved a lot in a lot of initiatives within the company to increase the representation of women in not only just in leadership roles, but also in engineering and tech overall. So a number of things. I try my best to do as much as I can. And I think, again, you don't need to do anything groundbreaking. Just do a little bit like you are doing, like I'm trying to do, and many others. Just keep doing that, and I think we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And thank you for mentioning the need of role models in the industry. It's also like, because like some people might think that it's an easy job being like a role model or something like that, but actually it's not. Even like me recording that podcast, I very often then question myself whether I'm good enough to do that, or whether I'm not saying something that might be not um, I don't want to use the word convenient or insultive, because that's too much, but this kind of to not hurt someone's feelings, for example, or to behave to my standards,
Mm.
and to actually empower people, empower women to try, yeah, to try and fail sometimes, because it's not
Yes.
perfect and it's a journey. Um, and I wanted to also touch the topic of work-life balance, because with these high demanding roles, with building high performance teams, with being a role model, supporting communities, and family commitments, how do you manage work-life balance?
This is
Does
a
something like that exist?
this is a very, very good question, and I think that the way I think of it, and I've always thought of it, is this is all life. I don't think about work life balance. I just think about life and balance because in my life is my work, and in my life are my kids and my husband and my home and my dog and my cat and everything that goes in there. And also, it has my friends, and it's got my colleagues, and it has everything. So when you think about all of it in one pot, I work um, for my passion as well as for my competence, but I don't feel like I need to separate out what I do at work from what I call life. And there is a reason. I mean, I know that there is a lot of literature around work life balance, and people think, okay, you should separate this from this. But really, in my mind, it's all just one thing. So for example, if I need my son, who's 7 year old, was running a little tiny little marathon in their school. They do it for fundraising anyway. I was there to support him. I will never miss it for the world. And because I take it as a part of the life bucket, not work and life bucket, I make room for that as well as work alongside. So the boundaries are a little bit blurred for me in that sense. And I think that you need to really think about what is the most important thing to you at what point. You think about your responsibilities as a leader, your responsibilities as a mom, and then you make room for all of those things. And then make sure that you are making room for some quiet, peace and quiet for yourself as well along the way. So be very intentional about how many things you are you want to prioritize, and what do you want to prioritize at what stage. Like I mentioned before, it is good to concentrate on one thing at a time. I think where people really struggle is that they've got five things going at work, five things going at home, and therefore they're really, really struggling to manage. I think if you concentrate on one thing at a time and then slowly progress, that really helps, especially in the let's say the work context. In life, you might not be able to if you've got multiple children. Sometimes it's unavoidable. But in work, if you're concentrating on one thing at a time and finishing it, I find that you're much more efficient. There is also another thing I would say is that sometimes you have to think about um, you have to make choices where you might not be able to do some of the things. Like in my in my life, I would say I am not much of a TV watcher, for example. And people love watching TV and stuff. For me, it's a waste of time. So I am much more in the hours people probably just sit watching TV. I do 50 other things. So there are choices you can make. But again, it depends on what you prioritize.
Yeah, it's always about choosing what's most important for you. Thank you for highlighting that. Although it's very difficult to choose what's the most important, there's like so many things in the world we would like to do, we would like to be. Um,
It is important. I think because there is only one of you. If you want to be 100 different things, there is only one of you. So you got to think about it, what you have to do. And I think where people really struggle is they forget that there's only one of you. And if you are putting energy in 50 different things, you can't be all those 50 different things. I have very successfully been able to do a lot of different things in parallel, just because I actually really only concentrate on one thing at a time. So, this whole notion of multitasking, for me, it does not exist. I'm not a multitasker. I don't even think about it. I think one thing at a time. And I do think that you are able to perform much at a much higher level if you do one thing at a time. Again, this is coming back to what kind of I found very useful.
yeah, and I think many leaders, many people will agree with that. Yeah, they make their lessons. Um, and what advice would you give to other working parents in tech striving to merge professional and personal life?
I would say that, be very open and honest about your life with your employer, because I believe that when now the employers are employing people, we employ them as a whole person. You bring your whole personality in. I don't want you to leave anything at the gate. I want you to bring, your quirkiness, your funniness, your personality in when you walk through the door. So the thing is that when we bring our personalities in, we also bring, like I mentioned, our commitments, our responsibilities, our baggage. Everything comes through the door. Bring that in, because actually when you go to the employer, you have to be very transparent about them, transparent about who you are. And if you are, what I am finding is that more and more employers are open to having that conversation with you and accept you, so that it's not a surprise for them, and it's easier for you to move forward as well. So as a parent, if you have to sometimes pick up your children, be transparent about it. In my calendar, there is children pickup time always blocked out. I go out, I pick up my kids, I bring them home, I give them a snack, I spend time with them. That time in my calendar is unbookable. Okay? That's non negotiable. And that is something that is as an expectation I have set out to the company. I I perform according to their standards and according to the expectations. But my expectation is that I will have the time for my kids, and that's non-negotiable. So find out what your non-negotiables are and highlight them with the employer, and be very, very open and honest about it. Around that, you can move other things around and add flexibility. I believe that there is a lot of flexibility available. We just sometimes shy away from discussing that because just think, oh, what is the employer going to think? Why am I asking that I need to pick up my kids? I never feel any of that. I'm not guilty of that. That is a part of me. You have hired me. It comes with what I have. My family comes with the deal, basically.
And I think it's also a good advice for women like me, for example, not having children, not having, a kind of like a wider family, I would say, or relationship. Because I also have like important things for me, like this podcast, for example. And it's also one of my priorities, very important for me, because it makes me feel joy and also helps me to learn, yeah, to grow and to share with the community what's not only important for me but what's important for you, like leaders like you and other people in the wider business, I would say. So thank you for that advice. I'm going to take it and implement
Wonderful.
it.
I hope it will be useful to you. It has been certainly been very useful to me, and I've been able to maintain a really fulfilling family life as well as very good career. So it worked for me.
I actually, before our recording, I read your article on LinkedIn on the choice between the career and setting up the family. And yeah, that's also like eye opening that you don't have to choose, that you can connect it. I mean, you can choose the priorities within the certain amount of time, but you can have it all. Yeah.
And also, I think one of the things that, I mean, that was in particular talking about women because this question comes up again and again for women. Should we work? Should we not work? Can you actually have a career and a family? And so the point was that, yeah, you're not, if you are having an off day or a bad day, you're not a shit employee. Don't think that you're rubbish because you couldn't actually perform to your best on that day. Everyone, forgive yourself is the main point as well. So there are many things you can do, and you're not a bad mom if you sometimes forget something. And I think we tend to be our own worst critics, and I think that doesn't help. Yeah, I tried to write that because it was something in my head. I was thinking about it a lot, and I thought, you know what? Why limit your ambition? You shouldn't. You can have it, but the thing is, you won't be everything all at once. Don't try to be. Be one thing at one time and you can have it all.
Yeah, yeah. Don't try to be everything at once. That's a very good, I think, summary of our conversation. Because I wanted to ask you about one key takeaway,
Mm.
but I think that can be in. Don't try to be everything at once. Semi, what's the one thing you're most looking forward to achieving or experiencing that year?
This year, wow. I mean, this year is a very interesting year, both in terms of what we're doing with Women in Tech Dorset community as well as Prima. So, in terms of Women in Tech Dorset community, we are hosting a conference. So, this is we don't have a tech conference in Dorset, and we are so Women in Tech Dorset is organizing it, and considering it's all done on voluntary basis, is going to be huge. So that is a hugely important. This summer is going to be all exciting for that reason. So I'm really looking forward to that. And in terms of Prima, well, we are going for global expansion, and engineering is at the heart and soul of that. So there are many, many things for us to do in order to scale the teams, the technology, and the architecture. So there's a lot of fascinating things in that. As a mum, I've always got a lot of lovely things to look forward to with my kids. We're going into a half term next week, which means I've taken the whole week off, and we've set up a lot of foraging in the forest activities and pony rides and all of those sort of stuff I do with my kids, and I can't wait to enjoy it with them.
Oh, there is a lot of happening in your life. Yeah, that's amazing. I wish you like a lot of successes with the conference, with half terms, and with Prima expansion. And for our listeners who wish to connect with you to learn more about your initiatives, where they can find you online.
I think the best place to connect with me is LinkedIn because it's got lots of content there, and from there you can read about the women in tech stuff. You can read about the any webinars, any other things that we are doing online, as well as if you are interested in finding out about new job posting in my team, or you're interested in how we build high performance teams or anything around that, or any kind of conference talks. There's a lot of content on my LinkedIn, so just connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, and also if any of you listeners want to have a chat sometime, just reach out. I'm more than happy always to just have a chat with the colleagues from the tech community, and we can share information about our journey.
Thank you, Sami. I'll put the link to your LinkedIn to the podcast description once it will be live. And thank you for our conversation. It was, yeah, the amount of knowledge and learnings that you provided is just, yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was incredible seeing you at the conference, actually, and you're one of those people who really left an impression on me when we spoke. And it was really great that we were able to collaborate. And I look forward to perhaps collaborating in the future as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Always love this positive energy and yeah, the eager to make an impact.
Fantastic.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of Doing It My Way by Beata Matras. If you enjoyed this episode, please do not forget to subscribe. Remember, this podcast is a dynamic journey and your feedback is very welcomed. Connect with me on social media. I would like to hear your thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions. And stay tuned for upcoming episodes. And until next time, keep doing it your way.